Hello, everyone. I hope you have gained a lot of insight in the past 2 days at Shiplight Surge 1.0, Shiplight's first ever virtual mega summit hosted in association with Your Story. Today is the final day of the event, and I can assure you it is another amazing day filled with great strategies and lessons. My name is Madan Mohan Rao, Research Director at Your Story, and on behalf of all of us, welcome to this evening. I'll be your moderator for this first panel. Before I introduce our five outstanding panelists, let me set the context for this discussion. The growth of India's e-commerce sector isn't a surprise to anyone. The e-commerce market was estimated to reach $200 billion by 2026, but the pandemic gave it a massive boost. The market's upward growth trajectory puts one sector in the spotlight, and that has been a key enabler in its growth: logistics. As this growth continues, there will be more pressure on logistics partners for flexible and agile solutions. The need for fast delivery services and better technology to improve customer experience has become the need of the hour. Because when it comes to logistics, its future is going to be determined by the speed of responding to market change and staying ahead of the demand curve. But that is riddled with challenges. How do you effectively leverage technology? How do you save costs? How do you avoid factors that cause setbacks? To answer all these questions, we have a panel of industry leaders who will share their insights and learnings about this dynamic sector. So, first of all, please welcome Gaurav Gupta, co founder of Shipway. Gaurav has always been passionate about solving real problems at a high scale. He calls himself a product guy at heart with a focus on spearheading technology and AI and helping D2C brands flourish. Welcome aboard, Gaurav.
Thank you. Thank you, Madan.
Thanks. Next up, we have Naveen Joshua, co founder and director of Green Honchos. Naveen has over 20 years of experience across diverse functions like analytics, retail, and alliances in both domestic and international markets. Welcome aboard, Naveen.
Thanks, Zeta.
Up next, we have joining us Pranav Gupta, founder of Top India Logistics. Pranav comes with over 6 core years in the supply chain sector, working with CPG, manufacturing, cosmetics, and packaging industries. His aim is to help standardize supply chain complexities, restructure processes, and save money for customers. Welcome aboard, Pranav.
Pleasure to be here, Madan. Thank you.
Thanks. Also joining us is Sunil Kumar, manager of Unicommerce. Sunil has over 20 years of experience in sales, marketing, and business strategy. He has been a part of the sales vertical at Unicommerce for the past 3 years. Welcome, Sunil. And finally joining us, thanks. And finally joining us is Sugam Jain, founder and CEO of Shiplight. Sugam's background in finance and IB and hands-on experience in building GoPaisa.com, one of India's largest cashback websites, has equipped him with the skills to build a business from the ground up. His four-part strategy of streamlining services, technology, processes, and marketing has been the driving factor of developing symbiotic working relationships in the e-commerce domain. Welcome aboard, Sugam.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Good. Now that we have everyone on board, let's dive into the questions. We also have some questions coming in from the audience, I believe. So please do type in your questions in the chat window or the Q&A section. My first question to start the discussion will be Gaurav. So Gaurav, to start with you, we have just passed the second wave of the COVID. Hopefully there'll be no third wave. Let's see what happens. How has the logistics industry overcome all these challenges in the last few months? And what do you see coming up in the future? Gaurav?
Thank you. Thank you, Madan, and hello, everyone. So the logistics industry is one of the industry which has seen a lot of, you can say, interest as well as lot of activities when it comes to D2C, because a lot of brands are moving from single warehouse to multi warehouse, and lot of 3PLs like Shiplight, they are also coming up with it's which are going closer to the customer so that they can provide the same day delivery, next day, 2 day delivery, 1 day delivery, or next day delivery. So this is one of the biggest change that we are seeing in the industry. If we talk about from the logistic point of view, and overall, if we see the D2C space, a lot of investment activities are going on, and a lot of players are acting. The ecosystem is growing at a very good pace, which is empowering the all overall customers' need and the logistic industry.
Thanks, Gaurav. My next question is for Sugam. Sugam, the last 1 year, as we've heard, has been a roller coaster ride for everyone, especially logistics. So can you share some of your experiences during this up and down period? What have been some of your learnings, Sugam?
Sure, man. So I think all of us are in the same boat here, when we talk about the up and down and the roller coasters. in February 2020, we were at a stellar growth trajectory, and in March, suddenly the 20th March, 21st March, something around that, lockdown was announced, and we saw business going from 100 to 10, and then everything was uncertain. Everybody was at home thinking what is gonna happen, what's making contingency plans, continuity plans, and our experience has been, we were sure that as the lockdown eased, the essentials were allowed, the zoning was done. Business started picking up, and we saw it going from 10 to not 100. We went to we saw it going to 200, then 300 shortly. So that's the growth curve we have seen, and that's the I think that fits the roller coaster analogy that you just said, that going from a scale to almost zero, and then going to triple in a very short span of time. The time span was probably not more than 3 months, and that taught us a lot. E-commerce found its feet first. Once the lockdown started easing, e-commerce was the first to find growth, find customers, with customer behavior changing, ordering essentials at home, not going out for anything. I think customers have been most hesitant about buying groceries, and probably second most the fashion category online. They wanted to touch and feel and try, and that all has changed. Nobody's going to the showrooms, nobody's everybody's ordering at home. I've seen my friends ordering clothes, shirts and jeans, which they never used to order online, do that, and which is I feel a good thing for all of us. And during that duration, Madan, what we had to do was we had to innovate every day. There was a practice of brainstorming. There was no time to brainstorm. There was no time to build. Everything was to be done today, and we were building new processes every day for the team, for the sellers, and for our internal functioning as well. And we were rolling out new features. We were rolling out zoning systems in the system. We were creating provisions to get the essentials delivered first. So all of that, gave us a lot of learning about operations management, working remotely. And I think I can't even count what all we have learned, what all precious learnings this lockdown and pandemic has given us.
Thanks, Sugam. That's very well said. Everyone was learning at warp speed during this whole crisis. My next question is for Naveen. Naveen, we've seen also the rise of omni-channel e-commerce during these periods, but there still seems to be a gap in understanding which model is relevant for businesses. So can you shed some light on how is an omni-channel customer experience helping businesses? How does a brand know when to adopt this model? Naveen?
Sure. Thanks for bringing me in here. So I think very much, as everyone was talking about, how the pandemic has impacted a lot of briskness in everyone's thinking quick on their feet. Similarly, we come from the brand and the consumer side of it as Green Honchos and Cartmax. So the brands had clear cash flow issues with their stores being closed. I think omni-channel has been romanced around as a buzzword over the last few years. But the pandemic is what really forced the urgency. In India, though, omni-channel typically means omni-fulfillment. When you look at it in the larger context, in general, omni-channel means an omni-experience where the brand provides a seamless experience to its customer. But in the Indian context, and rightfully so, the supply chain and the logistics has to first be set for that to happen. And so brands had to, for no other reason, but for pure survival, expose their inventory, which was stuck in stores, and expose it online. So a lot of the logistics players, a lot of the order management players, the likes of Unicommerce and Shipway and Shiplight, had really come into the game to enable brands to be able to continue to expose a major portion of their inventory to their consumers and continue to drive lifeblood through the business. So I think what was actually ambling along in terms of its understanding in terms of omni-channel got a huge acceleration in the last 2 years. And turning the physical stores into points of sale 24/7, at least from a full logistics perspective or inventory perspective, and then using them as pickup points when the stores were available, or dark stores, is what a lot of brands have begun to do much better. And just the ability to have offline inventory exposed for online significantly increased actually sell through for a lot of the brands that had segregated warehousing or stock for offline versus online. So suddenly we saw those brands completely jumping up just due to 4x, 5x, 6x exposure of stock where all online channels, and that too in a shared inventory model. So I think India has been a great example of innovative omni-channel implementation from the other end of it.
Thanks, Naveen, for pointing out those advantages and some of the challenges as well. Let's bring Sunil into the discussion now. Sunil, the current pandemic also opened new markets, some in tier 2 and tier 3 cities as well. How easy or how difficult was it for you to cater to this demographic? Sunil?
Yeah. So truly said, Madan, that the pandemic has opened new markets into tier 2 and 3 cities. Our data says that previously there was around 30 to 40% coming in from tier 2 and 3 cities, which has now increased to 60 to 70%. As there was a fundamental shift, as everyone knows, of sellers from offline to online, and there was inclination towards technology. But it was a bit challenging task, as technology adoption was a challenge, as the sellers were not so tech savvy. So we as a company acquired clients from cities like Tirupur, Coimbatore, Ludhiana, Baroda, Siliguri, and other small towns and cities where not only technology but language was also a big problem. But only thing that was present with all the sellers was that there was willingness to sell online. So what we as a team took care of this by educating them, guiding or training them with our robust onboarding process. We also shared with them the DIY videos, training decks, and hand-holding them to start using the platforms. We also witnessed that the sellers were taking more time than our tier 1 city sellers in understanding the platform. But our team excelled in this by giving them sufficient time and making them understand and help them in getting orders processed in real time kind of thing. Apart from this, we also built a very well-trained partner network, which is spread across the country, who not only helped us in acquiring these clients from this tier 2 or 3 cities, but also helped us in onboarding phases. And most importantly, our current client base that we are having, they played a very important role over there with word of mouth that Unicommerce as a platform is easy to use and user-friendly with a great team to support, which gave this tier 2 and 3 city sellers confidence on Unicommerce. So these are the few ways that we have catered to this demographics.
Thanks, Sunil. Let's now bring in our fifth speaker, Pranav. Pranav, Top India Logistics is just over a year old now. And when you ventured out, what made you want to choose logistics, especially warehousing? What challenges do you think some customers face in this sector, warehousing? Pranav?
Right. Thanks, Madan. Coming from a second gen of a business family background, understood that how competitive the market is currently for any manufacturing or any trading firm. So the real USP anyone can get is how fast you can get it to the end consumer, which is where I started thinking about how do we improve the supply chain and logistics. So I was in the US for a few years. So firsthand, I've experienced how a supply chain works very efficiently. Wanted to adopt the same model here in India, looking at, approximately 3 times the population as compared to the United States. So wanted to organize this market in terms of bringing in more transparency and achieving same day dispatch for e-commerce orders is how I got into this warehousing and logistics. Current challenges, Madan, some customers are facing is India being such vast. So there are lots of local laws or local authorities varying across north, south, east, and west. So there is no single point of contact for, let's say, D2C sellers to, kind of have all this in a uniform pattern so that they can focus on their own sales and marketing. So they usually, what we find out is they get stuck between, operations and making sure the right product is being dispatched or fulfilled or reached to the end customer. So we kind of come into the picture and kind of normalize the backend part, the end-to-end supply chain part, all the way from when an order comes in to the time it reaches the customer. So that challenging part is what we are trying to cater to right now. The other part, what customers or what brands are currently facing is also the returns, which we also see it at the fulfillment centers. So a lot of more returns coming in. Some are in good condition, some are in damaged condition. So that's also one aspect I think is very challenging for current D2C sellers. Yeah.
Thanks, Pranav. Let me cycle back now to Gaurav for the second round of questions for the whole panel. So, Gaurav, the D2C market seems to be booming today, and while Shipway has already tailored its product as per customer needs in the beginning during launch time, how have you broadened your offering now, keeping the current pandemic in time, considering that you grew 4 times last year? Gaurav?
So yes, as you said, like D2C market is booming, and so do we also have to be on our toes. Because we as a company has always been a customer focused and customer centric company, and our product is built on top of like by thousands of feedbacks from the customers, right? And we are, and the focus is always to be able to provide the technology so that the brands can empower their customers. They can provide an excellent customer experience to their brands. And so on the similar lines, so we have recently introduced returns and refunds automation. As Pranav mentioned, it's a big problem, not only from the brand's perspective, like to reduce the returns, but also from the managing side, like how you manage the returns and how you going to manage the refunds or exchanges. So which eventually takes the customer experience to the next level.
Thanks, Gaurav. You're right. It definitely goes up to the next level when returns come into the picture. Let's turn to Sugam now. Sugam, looking at the demand growth, technology is crucial today in the logistics and fulfillment industry. So how are you scaling up in terms of infrastructure and technology to meet this kind of rising demand? Sugam?
Right, Madan. So we went into lockdown. We had a total team of 40 people, and out of those, 10 people were in the engineering team. Today we have a tech team of 30 people, and we are targeting it to be around 55 people by the end of the year. That's in terms of the requirement, the growth, to handle the growth and the new features that we have to build and that we are planning to roll out. We are automating all the most of the operations for the sellers, that shippers, the processing the workflows to book and dispatch the shipments. We are working aggressively towards addressing that piece of the the pre-dispatch process, and trying to maximize the automation there. I think when we brainstorm towards the product, every thought is geared towards the scalability for our merchants, for our sellers, that they don't have to think or do anything manually when they're going from 10 orders a day to 100 orders a day, and we are there to enable them and support them in reaching there. We have also recently launched a brand new dashboard with a lot of new features, with the where the processing is much easier, and it's a much better shipper experience, I would say. We are also launching fulfillment centers across 3 cities in India: Delhi, Mumbai, and Bangalore. And so by the end of the financial year, we'll be present in 9 cities. So fulfillment, we see fulfillment as a key piece of the next e-commerce growth journey. And we need to get the as the panelists have also pointed out, we need to get the supply closer to the demand, and then same day, next day delivery is the focus going ahead. We are again focusing on the fastest possible fulfillment that there can be, and all our thoughts and actions are going towards that.
Thanks, Sugam. It's good to hear of the future steps in your e-commerce journey. Let's turn to some customer issues now. Let's turn to Navi. Navi, omni-channel in
Madan.
India is still in its nascent stages. What makes customers hesitate? What are the times that we are in? And is the technology stable? Is it here to stay? Navi?
Yeah. So, Madan, I'd just like to add, if that's okay with you, to Sugam's point there in terms of technology. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Lost your voice. Yeah, okay. So basically, since we're talking about leveraging tech, I think the logistics players, especially aggregators like Shiplight, have done an absolute bang-up job in terms of providing good tech in terms of the tracking. And tracking, which means forward plus reverse. I think forward's never been that big an issue, especially in terms of the consumer angst. So since I'm bringing in the consumer aspect here, I believe that honestly, marketplaces have led the way. They do a super job there in providing that full 360 experience. That's where I think all our jobs as well is to ensure that the D2C brands, I think Sugam mentioned about the first 100 orders or the first 1,000 orders. How do we as an ecosystem handhold brands or sellers on their own D2C to try and match that consumer experience of the forward and reverse in their entire journey? So while the logistics players and aggregators have enabled the businesses to have that one window view, I think on the front end side, the website builders or e-commerce platforms, you could call it, the standard CMSs, haven't provided that same transparency to the consumer, and that's where I do believe some of the cookie crumbles, and it's a huge opportunity area whereas the business has got that from the back end and the logistics and the backbone in terms of leveraging tech, but the website is where the consumer transacts. And ideally, that's the one window from which they would, that's the brand that they're purchasing from, or the brand store. There, I think more time, effort, investment needs to go from the brand store owners. The tech is available, it's been made available from the back-end logistics and supply chain guys. But to match the marketplace experience, I think consumers are still struggling. So whenever you hear of some great D2C first brands providing a good experience, it becomes very showcaseable. It becomes a story. How does that become the norm? I think we have a long way to go to provide consumers a one window for their post-order journey.
Thanks so much, Naveen. My next question now is for Sunil. Sunil, a bit earlier, we talked about the returns policy of different companies. Unicommerce has recently launched a revamped returns management solution for its customers. So what are the advantages that you offer, and why is focusing on returns management so important today? Sunil?
So Madan, if you see, like, e-commerce returns have been the biggest pain point for retailers, and it is a major part of the operation costs, and everyone is witnessing it. It has been observed that many retailers cannot expand their online business selling due to high return, which directly impacts their bottom line. So what Unicommerce has developed the solutions after rigorous research and understanding the pain points of retailers with continuous feedbacks. So like, if you see, like, we have phased into two parts kind of thing. First, to alert retailers about orders with high return potential and measures to minimize returns. And the second lever was to ensure a smooth return process with clearer visibility of stock movement and faster inventory turnaround. So if you see, like, here, I can tell you about like the 4 advantages of the returns management that we have built in onto our platform kind of thing. First one, you can say, like, identify and avoid potential returns over there. So Unicommerce return solution empowers the e-commerce sellers to identify potential returns and alert them even before the dispatch happens. So we allow e-commerce sellers to set up an elaborate and detailed outbound quality check parameters processed during order processing workflow, and allow sellers to only ship products that pass the QC parameters. So that is one thing that I can say. Then the second point is like 100% trackable inventory. So as everyone knows, like, whenever there is a return coming in over there, so it can be in a good or a bad. We heard from our panelists earlier also. So it can be a good inventory or a bad inventory. So we allow the segregation after the quality check to keep into different buckets into good or bad inventory. If it is a good inventory, it again gets added into the pool of the inventory and it gets highlighted onto the front end over there for this sale kind of thing. So this is the second thing. And the third one that I can say, the bulk return processing for B2B and offline stores. So that has become very critical nowadays. So if you see in companies like pharma, FMCG, or personal care kind of thing, they usually ship out bulk orders over there, and taking the returns in bulk is a big pain. So we have developed a solution. Our solution is designed in such a manner that the system can take the bulk returns as well. And then the fourth thing that I can say about is like now the industry or the market is moving towards like order replacement. So there are use cases where customers don't want to return, but they want to exchange the products. Okay. So, and this has led the logistics companies to set up a seamless replacement process to reduce the return operating costs over there. So what we have done, we have also built those capabilities wherein Unicommerce enables the sellers with our AI-driven services technology that automatically assigns shipment to the logistic partners. This is the exchange simultaneously. So the increasing number of e-commerce are now investing in the simultaneous exchange system to ensure that customers can return the original product and receive the exchange product at the same time. So these are the 4 ways, Madan, that I can tell you that how we are helping into the returns management.
Thanks, Sunil. That's very reassuring to show for the customers, I'm sure. I've got one more question now for Pranav. I can also see some audience questions coming in, but let me just finish one more round with all the panelists and then we take the audience questions. We've got lots of time, don't worry. So Pranav, as a young entrepreneur, what is one piece of advice you have for entrepreneurs who also want to break into this logistics space? Pranav?
Absolutely. So logistics is like a vast ocean, right? Supply chain. There are lots of different fields you can enter into and try to solve a lot of problems for the customers. So what I would really advise is, if you just focus on the problem, because if you start with one problem, you tend to drift apart into solving other problems. But what I would say as a logistics, you need to have a strong base of your operations first, be it warehousing or be it logistics. So instead, I would advise to, invest and make your operations more resourceful so that you have a good base ground. So when customers do come or when you do serve the customers, you already have you already know how to handle them, as compared to, because a lot of times what we have seen is the customers that come to us, they are not satisfied with another 3PL or another warehousing partner. So that is where they come and try to find another player in the market because their operations is not up to the mark, is what we feel. So I would really say that focus on more on building your core expertise and core strength for the operations, which is heavily dependent on manpower, infrastructure, and of course technology.
Thanks, Pranav. That's good advice indeed for the aspiring founders in the audience. I've got one more round of questions for our panel, and then we'll come to all these audience questions which are piling up. So Gaurav, my question for you now is, what should companies do to not just reduce refund cycle times, but reduce the overall need for refunds? Gaurav?
Yes. So there, I think, in order to reduce the refund, so there are 2 ways, I think, where we can approach. One is to overall reduce the returns, right? So, and that is a big, like there are multiple use cases. I'll come to that. And other is like to convert those refunds into exchanges. Like once if a user wants to have a refund, and if we can offer them some extra credits or some instant exchange from the whole portfolio, right? Instead of just providing the exchange with the variants, and we can get some incentivize them 2-3%, 5%, and then can actually convert those sales into exchanges, and you get to keep the revenue instead of losing the revenue in terms of refunds. And other portion would be to reduce the overall returns, and on an average, almost in the apparel and footwear industry, 20 to 30% of the orders are getting returned, maybe due to the fitting issue, size issue, or something like that. And sometimes it could be due to the damage issue. So So there are a lot of ways and lot of you can say startups are coming up who are actually helping you in the AR or VR technologies, right? Where you can actually see how it will fit you, and you can actually measure how the shoes is going to fit. What are the various arch sizes, feet size, or what is the you can say what are the alternate shoes you are wearing for Nike, etc. And you can get a good amount, like good reference point of view, and which can reduce this overall fitting and these kind of issues, size issues.
Thanks, Gaurav. Those are some good steps for our audience to follow. My next question now is for Sugam. Sugam, in India, many people still rely on the COD, cash on delivery payment method, but the chances of loss during logistics are higher in case they cancel. So, how should a seller prepare themselves for such situations? Sugam?
So Madan, I think India is a unique geography across the world where this mode of payment exists, and it primarily stems from the mistrust of online sales and the quality of the product and various other factors. Initially, I would say the primary factor was the low penetration of digital payments, but I think that situation has changed after the pandemic, and we have seen a uptick in the prepaid orders and partially marginally reducing COD percentage. But yes, what you said, very well said, that it might, it can be a very well a major factor towards the losses of the seller, and COD orders do have a higher chances of getting returned. So what we typically advise our merchants or sellers is to first of all, verify all the COD orders, make a call to those customers and verify that if they have placed the order, if they want it. And towards that direction, we are launching our automated COD verification process in collaboration with Shipway itself, where the customers will get a call to confirm the COD orders. And secondly, I would, what we typically advise is to invest in branding of the store so that there is a trust built up and customers are more willing to shell out the money pre-ordering. So at the time of order, if they can place a prepaid order, that almost guarantees delivery. Third, I would say is using fulfillment or the fastest mode of fulfillment possible for COD orders specifically. As soon as the order reaches the customer, the minimum time they have to change their mind is what would be the key factor in reducing COD returns. Lastly, even after taking all these measures, we generally don't see a huge reduction in the COD returns. COD returns is a necessary evil. It will always be there. And a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of merchants get very disheartened seeing the rate of return and the sheer quantity of returns of COD orders. Sometimes they shut off the COD mode of payment, which is also not a very good thing because that tanks the sales right away. So lastly, what we typically advise is to build some percentage of returns in the cost structure. So that is something that everybody should look at in terms of pricing, that some amount of returns should be taken as a cost. So that I think overall all these steps can help control the losses from the returns, the COD returns.
Thanks, Sugam, for pointing out the challenges and some very creative ways to deal with those challenges. Let's turn to Naveen now. Naveen, we've talked about omni-channel quite a bit already, but can you tell us what kinds of businesses do absolutely have to have a physical channel? And how can digital still help enhance the physical experience for those who have physical channels? Naveen?
Yeah, I'll be happy to share some thoughts on that. I do believe certain categories are better served in a digital kind of a manner. You look at how a Pepperfry or a Lenskart have gone around that in a hybrid kind of a model where it started digital first and then went physical. Yeah, I mean, so some of those categories, especially eyewear or definitely even something like grocery, if you look at it, which is more hyper local in nature, anything any like a Licious, all these kind of need a supply chain set up anyway, which has a hyper local delivery. So it might as well become a point of interaction, from a physical digital perspective. And when you come to categories which are a little more impulse based, like fashion, lifestyle, home, and we talked about a lot, where returns is a matter that comes into the picture. I do believe that, given the fact that, people really, customers want much quicker delivery. So if we are able to, if omnichannel can help enable that, where, they realize the benefit of a brand, typically regional brands or nationalized brands are best suited to, kind of just open out their already physical presence into digital hubs as well, because it, Sugam mentioned trust. It just builds more trust. They tend to see, a lot more prepaid orders even through their digital. Even someone like, so we work with V2 Retail, V-Mart, Spencer. So their Liberty. So such brands have a higher percentage of, prepaid. And we also talked about branding, and because if there's a recall in the brand, there's more trust. So it also has lower returns. And I think even returns is segmented into customer returns and return to origin, RTO. I think customer returns is fine. That happens in the store as well, physically. It's the RTO that creates all the confusion, where the intent seems very low. And that's the burn. That's the real burn. So if digitally present businesses can cater to them being even points of return, where the customer could walk in for that, if it's, omni-enabled, if they can even dispatch orders quicker, and even utilize, localization of inventory for cheaper logistics, it just calls for a much better ecosystem there.
Thanks, Naveen. Last couple of questions before we go to the audience now. Question is for Suni. Suni, we talked about returns policies already, but there are unfortunately some customers who abuse returns policies. So what are some risks of abuse of such returns policies, and how can they be tackled? Suni?
So, Madan, like as Naveen was also talking about the RTOs and the CIR kind of thing. So, return is an essential part of business, and I think it will always remain there, and it can't be totally eliminated from the e-commerce game. In other words, you can also say that returns helps in retaining the clients, leads to customer satisfaction, and it also helps in creating a brand loyalty kind of thing. So, if you ask me like how, so what we have done, companies have to implement system in place to put the returns in control, and we have designed our system in such a fashion that we can cater to this problem. So, as Naveen was also telling about the RTO and CIR, and I'm also going to talk about the same thing over there. So there are basically two types of returns in e-commerce industry, and Unicommerce as a company is trying to excel in minimizing it. In case of RTO, it can be either because of the improper address or the customer unavailability kind of thing. So in case of address unavailability, our system is learning every day and alerts our clients about potential returnable addresses. And in case of CIR, which is customer initiated returns, it can be because of the product description was something else and something else was delivered over there, or the wrong item dispatched. So in case of wrong items dispatched, we as a company have an advanced warehouse management system where every item getting dispatched from the warehouse goes through a scanning process and a stringent quality check parameters, which minimizes in wrong item dispatches. The other steps that I can think of can be taken by the brands, can be limiting returns eligibility by shortening the return duration. Then stricter inspection process for the return items, whether it's a good inventory, bad inventory, and based on that they can put the intelligence behind that, how to minimize all these things. And also by creating a repository for the customers who can be blacklisted to leverage the return policy. Okay. So, and then brands can also incentivize their customers for prepaid purchase versus COD, because COD always leads to higher returns. So, Mother, as for me, these are the few measures that can be taken by the brands to minimize the abuse of the return policies.
Sunil, those are some very practical tips for our audience. I hope they can implement some of your very useful and implemented suggestions. My last question for the panel before we go to the audience now is to Pranav, looking more towards the future. Pranav, what are some trends that you see in the logistics sector? What's happening? What are some potential opportunities and challenges? Pranav?
So logistics, it's not confined to any one industry. It can be FMCG, it can be automotive, it can be IT. So it's so the good part is now after the pandemic, everything for an FMCG sector is being shipped from a warehouse, because a lot of these middle showrooms or shops, because of it being shut, everything is moving one step backwards and fulfilling from the warehouse. So that ways, the overall costing of the product or the logistic also reduces, because there is there's less manpower for in the showrooms, and then there is the rent part. So all the costs are being reduced. At the same time, there are a lot of players in logistics in India. So it's really getting tough right now to select which logistics provider or which warehousing partner to choose to go with, because being in the service industry, you don't know unless you have a taste of that partner, or unless it is recommended. So in logistics, that is why we see the government, where our esteemed Prime Minister is also repeatedly talking about how to improve the supply chain and logistics of our nation. So I really see this entire decade, a lot of impact will be on improving and organizing the entire end-to-end supply chain, not only for FMCG sector, but also for automotive and IT sector.
Thanks, Pranav. We now have about 15 minutes left for Q&A, which means we can take quite a few of these audience questions that are coming in. Let's take this one over here now. Suppose you're a company which has lower product prices, low profits, small revenues, and little growth. What do you think omnichannel e-commerce can offer? How should such a company approach logistics, omnichannel, retail, and so on? Who would like to take a stab at that?
I don't mind that.
Yeah, Naveen, go ahead.
So yeah, I think we're talking about value retailing here. And since we've had the experience of working with quite a few, I can tell you that the unit economics does manage to work out even in value retail. Let's say you've got a 300-400 rupee price point, and since we do V-Mart, V2, Liberty, etc. So we understand that almost all their volume is in that price point. If the product or the category range has greater volumetric weight, then it's a challenge. But if that apart, if you're talking about standard, apparel, etc., the cost of customer acquisition is significantly lower for a lower price point when we talk about generating traffic, because you're still utilize a open targeting in your digital channels. That lowers your cost of impression. So your typically, which is a large cost, which is your cost of acquisition through digital channels, drops quite a bit when you open the targeting, because it is a value retail, and you don't have to tighten your targeting of your ads too much. The other good benefit that comes with the value retail segment is, apart from the cost of marketing being low, your conversion rate also is very high. Much higher than if the price point goes above, let's say 999 or 1000. So just because of low cost of acquisition and higher conversion rate, what you call as your ROAS or your return on ad spend ends up being much higher even in the case of a lower price point. We have seen that. The third advantage that the lower price point also has is you could be fairly innovative with your product bundling, because the customer does not have a challenge in more items to basket. And if you just set the right mechanisms around it, then your cost of logistics also as a percentage to the order economics, not the item economics, turns out to again get well controlled. So these are 2 or 3 small areas that hopefully we've been able to answer some piece there.
So I would like to add to that, Naveen. I think the key here is that to track the metrics and fine tune them regularly. Continuously fine tuning the metrics like cost per sale, summarizing what you said rather, looking at all the 360-degree metrics, cost per sale, cost of per delivery, RTO percentage, the zone mix, that where the orders are coming from, and I would say even the product feedback, taking the product feedback, and probably a non-paid approach marketing strategy where you're leveraging social media and organic chatter more. I think that can benefit in this segment.
Yeah, I think, sorry for coming back in there once again, but just for the consumer, for the user's sake who wanted a holistic response, over a very large segment, we also found that the return percentage in the value retail segment is lower than when the average selling price is high, because the consumer feels that he's got a real deal when he purchases, so he doesn't really look to return that. So that also changes the entire economics. Talking in the same line that Shubham was mentioning, if you take a larger perspective and if you've got your metrics right, it might show a different picture, because there could be so-called analysis paralysis if you look at it in a broken manner.
Thanks, Naveen. Anyone else want to jump in? These two other very good audience questions. Maybe we should take a look at them. There are two questions about price points. So one of them is, how should a company adjust the price point if shipping is going to be included in the price of the item? And how can logistics the transportation costs be brought down, knowing that it's going to be at least 15% of the cost and it keeps changing day by day? So how should companies figure out what the right price point is? Anyone want to take a stab at that? Maybe Sunil or Pranav or Gaurav?
Yeah, I'll start. For the transportation piece, there will always be a cost to it. Setting your products closer to your consumers. So first of all, identifying where the actual demand is coming from and where is the hotspot in the entire geography, and setting the products closer to the customer will not only reduce the shipping cost but also the shipping time. A lot of analysis needs to go into what kind of products do we store, because there is a huge variety of products. You cannot have a safety stock inventory level of all of these products at all the locations. Your inventory cash flow will get stuck and it'll be very tough. So that is where demand planning or forecasting comes into the picture, where you look at your last 12 years or 24 years of data and see which product suits best, and accordingly place the product there. Will obviously reduce the transportation cost going forward. That's my advice.
Thanks, Pranav. Thanks. Very good tips indeed on choice of inventory and so on. Anyone else want to jump in? Sunil, Sugam?
So reducing the transportation cost, if you see, like Naveen was previously talking about, like dispatching the items or returning the items to the stores or the kiosk kind of thing over there. So as per me, if brands can go into like multi-warehousing solutions wherein the shipments can be delivered at a faster pace with a lower cost kind of thing. So to give an example, suppose an order coming from Delhi and the shipment is there, the mother warehouse is there in Bangalore and the shipment happens from Bangalore, automatically the cost increases over there. So what I can see over there, like brands switching on to or adopting the multiple warehouse systems, wherein the fulfillment partners coming into picture, the 3PL partners coming into picture over there, that will definitely reduce the costs of the shipment and the product over there.
I think what merchant also needs to look at in terms of logistic cost is categorizing the products into weight categories. That really helps with reducing the cost. And then one area of focus should be the packaging. If the packaging is well done, if there's no wastage of the volumetric weight, then that also helps reduce the cost a lot.
Thanks, Sugam. There's one question, a very interesting one from someone who's saying he's got challenges with a D2C snacks brand. So maybe we can generalize from that and figure out what categories work best in terms of delivery, shipping, and so on, and which categories are not so well suited for this. Anyone want to take a stab at that? Food, perishables, groceries, clothing, which sort of fits in very well into this delivery channel. Anyone want to share some insights with
So I think, Madan, it's really not about which category fits into the logistics well. We have to, continuously innovate and design logistics around the categories that are picking up. And grocery, everyone knows, is the category that a lot of innovation has happened around. It is very demanding category in terms of the weight of the packages, the size of the order, and the speed at which it needs to be delivered. So yes, it is definitely one of the challenging categories, the food and beverage category, the groceries, and maybe if we talk about some other challenging categories, that would include furniture and large goods, white goods and mattresses. So these are some categories which are very challenging, and we have seen a lot of innovation happening, a lot of decentralization happening in these categories, where logistics players are coming up. We are adding features on our platform to enable these categories.
Thanks. Anyone else want to jump on that?
So, Madan, if you see, like the FMCG, as I spoke earlier, also like FIFO and FIFO is very much required over there. So, what happens? Why there is a return into the FMCG? Because the products which has a lower shelf life kind of thing, and when it reaches to the customer's place, at the time it reaches, it is not in a proper shape, size kind of thing. And the customer tends to return those items over there. So yes, what Sugam told over there, on top of that, I would also like to add, like the brand should adopt a system wherein they would be able to ship those items which are lying into their warehouse onto FIFO, first expiry, first out, or first in, first out kind of thing, models to be adopted. So which will definitely decrease their returns percentage over there. And plus, whatever Sugam told, I just give a second backup to that.
Thanks, Sunil. Gaurav, you want to add to that, or Pranav?
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. In the categories, products which need a temperature controlled environment, that's a very challenging thing right now, because it's not just restricted to warehousing or a cold room, but also when it is being delivered to the end customer, in terms of let's say groceries or milk, or the transportation also needs to be temperature controlled. So a lot of times what we see is, by the time the product reaches to the end customer, let's say it's a chocolate, right? So you have to have that kind of a package. When it reaches the customer, it's it's in good shape and not melted, for example. So this temperature controlled aspect is the products in these categories is a little bit challenging than the other products which require a dry warehouse space, let's say from apparels or other FMCG items. Yeah.
Thanks, Pranav. We have time for just maybe one last question from the audience, which is, will we see a platform model coming in where a customer buys something online and then chooses which logistics provider, which shipping provider, based on maybe cost, convenience, price, other kinds of parameters over there? Will we see such kind of a model coming up into logistics space? Anyone want to take a look at the crystal ball and tell us whether it's feasible, whether it's going to come?
So I think I can take that up. I think it's very much possible, and I would say it's very much inevitable as well, because the kind of options that we are kind of seeing in the logistics space, like everyone is now talking about same day delivery, next day delivery, right? And if we see on the other side, like for example, Zomato, we see like earlier, like a year back, there was no delivery charges. Now they are also adding up delivery charges, and plus on top of that, they are also having a distance fee applicable as well, right? And people are kind of now comfortable having it to pay some kind of delivery fees in their shipment, right? And slowly and gradually, this, if you want a faster delivery, then definitely you need to pay some premium. And if people are ready to pay the premium, and definitely we are going to see some of these options at a checkout, like whether you would like to receive it next day, 2 days, after 2 days, 3 days, or in a certain window. So I think this is inevitable.
Thanks, Gaurav. Anyone else want to weigh in on that option? Naveen, perhaps?
No, I do believe that from a consumer standpoint, getting it quick and getting it, from the fulfillment experience perspective, it also reduces that entire pain of that return. The quicker it gets dispatched out, the quicker it reaches the consumer, and you're able to close that cycle. I think it's best for all. In any case, most of the economics is in repeat customer purchase and in loyalty. And I do believe whoever does a better job in the last mile, given that the rest of it in terms of the tech and the digital is a given, you know, will be able to, you know, make the real difference. So yes, I don't think the challenge is in charging a premium to the consumer, even for fulfillment. The challenge is delivering that experience and delivering it consistently.
Thanks, Naveen. That's a good note on which to end this panel, which is ultimately it's all about the customer experience. So
Sure.
whatever technology you're using, whatever team you have, whatever your business model is, whoever your investors are, ultimately the customer is at the center, and you need to get long-term value, lifetime value from these customers. So it's all about experience and engagement. With that, we
Sure.
come to the end of this panel. It's almost 4 o'clock now. Thanks to all of you for your hard-earned insights, very practical tips for our audience, whether they are consumers, investors, or aspiring startups, founders themselves.